free content for the coach, by the coach, raising the bar every week. Speed for Your Mind podcast, episode number 10. Speed for Your Mind podcast is sponsored by Powerlift Equipment. High quality equipment, unique design, and multifunctional training capabilities. Powerlift are innovators for the strength and conditioning field. Hey everybody, this is Zach Howell with Strength Coach Select. This is episode number 10 of the Speed for Your Mind podcast. Today on the show we have Spencer Brown, Director of Strength and Conditioning at Dartmouth College. Spence, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Glad I could be a part of this.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. To give you a little background on Spence, I actually, we were just talking about it before the show started. He interviewed me for, was it a paid internship?
Paid intern, yep.
Paid internship position. He didn't give it to me, so I'm going to say that. About 5 years ago, and we've kept in close contact ever since. So, Spence, can you give us a little bit about yourself and your background? When I went to college, I had no clue what I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to be a teacher. Was kind of dumb when it really came down to it of figuring out jobs. I think I was still caught in that mindset that everybody was either worked at a hospital or was a cop or a firefighter or a teacher. I just kind of limited my mind. And when I got to college, met our strength coach, was like, wow, this is a job. You get paid to do this. This is awesome, and always loved to train hard. And he played such an important role in my development and our team's development. And when I was a sophomore, I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. I remember just looking and being like, that's the same kind of guy I want to be, and that's what I want to do with my life. And that's what I want to commit myself to. And then I got an internship at Lafayette with Brad Potts. And he was my strength coach at Lafayette for 3 years. Did an internship with him. When I was graduating, he offered me a job as the assistant job. The assistant there was leaving. And he's like, job's yours if you want it. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I trust you, your work ethic, all this. I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. So we did it, and I stayed there for 2 years. Then I had another opportunity to be the director of strength and conditioning at Moravian College. Stayed there for 2.5 years. Really loved it there. Worked with great athletes, great coaches, great administrators. And then an opportunity opened up for football at Dartmouth. And I was the head strength coach for football for 2 years. And then I was just promoted a little over a year ago to the director of strength and conditioning, overseeing our entire department and 5 full-time staff members, including myself. I mean, you've had a journey, that's for sure.
Yeah.
People that don't know, Spence was my predecessor at Moravian College. I took over right after he left, and he did such a fantastic job that he made my job easy when I got there. So just like I tell everybody, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about, like everybody knows, we try and keep these under 20 minutes or so you guys can catch them on your drives to work and everything like that. But we're going to talk about technology and kind of every time I talk to Spence, it seems that he's got this going on or that going on, or technology and kind of how it's utilized in the field, and how he can utilize it during his programming. So my first question is to Spence is, what type of technology have you used in the past, and what are you using now, and how does it affect your programming?
Look, for all the younger strength coaches that might be at places where you don't have a ton of resources and whatnot, just keep researching it. If you have plans to go somewhere and you get lucky enough that a department gives you enough of a budget to try some things out, or utilize those things in your weight room or in your training and your practice, whatever, just research it on your own for right now. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. When I was at Lafayette and Moravian, I really just did a lot of research on my own and saw some things and was like, ooh, I wonder what that's like. I wonder, what the purpose of that is. And you always got to constantly ask yourself questions. And I've been very fortunate at Dartmouth. I don't think I've been told no yet, when I've been asking for things. And as long as you educate yourself and maybe educate them on the reasoning behind it and don't just say, hey, let's just do this, that obviously helps your case. And since I've been here, you know, we had some Tendo units when I first started, and now we have 18, you know, and not everyone gets to use them. Not everyone gets to use them. They just, you know, it's something that you got to kind of earn, and you got to build that trust with the relationship with the athletes. But we have 18 Tendo units. We use them. There's probably one team a day that uses them in here. We use them a lot. We have over 60 units of the Catapult GPS system that we use with different sports, men's and women's basketball, hockeys, and football. And then we also have Normatec units. We have 20 Normatec units that we have like a little lounge outside of our facility that has reclining chairs, has hip attachments, arm attachments, leg attachments that they can use at different levels. We kind of create a little guide for them at you know, pre-practice or pre-training or post-practice, pre-training. And Normatec was great about helping us out with all that kind of information. And then also, you know, obviously team builders now all over the place, and a lot of those software companies are starting to come out with helping us make our job simpler, tracking simpler, programming easier. And at a place like this where you might not have your teams year round, it makes it a lot easier to know what people are doing, to keep track of things, you know, and have those videos of exercises that they can pull from if they don't know what, you know, if they don't know what a hang clean is, that's bad. But let's use that as an example. Right. You know, it's in your program, and they might not know what that is. They can watch a properly executed video of how to do it, as well as contact us very easily and be like, hey, coach, couldn't do this. I need to modify that. And you can make adjustments to their program very simply.
Right. No, I think. And so how do you believe that like the technology and the programs that you've been able to use has helped your strength department? You run a department. I think a lot of people that's something a lot of people don't understand sometimes. It's like, you know, when you're a director, when you're a head strength coach, you run a department. You know, it's not just going out and training teams. It's not just you know, working with 3 or 4 people every day. It's you have to know what those 3 or 4 people are doing and what and the teams that they're working with and how the progress is there and everything that comes along with it. I think a lot of people don't realize that. They just say, as a head strength coach, he just kind of trains football, and that's just not the case at all. So how do you think that, you know, this type of technology, these things that are, you know, coming out on a regular basis, things that you're using, have really helped improve your guys' performance, both as a department and, you know, you personally as a strength coach?
You know, it's kind of like that pyramid. You know, you got the director, you have all your assistants, but at the same time, that pyramid goes up as well. And my assistants are a huge part of what we do here. You know, I think I have a great staff of young, hungry strength coaches that want to improve and are wanting to learn and wanting to implement new things. And using the technology has been a learning process for all of us. You know, we figure out different ways. I've got my hockey strength coach right now is figuring out, we went through the Reflexive Performance Reset certification, RPR certification course, and he's actually now a level 2. We did the level 2 course, and he's using it with his hockey athletes and their strides, you know, the power on their stride rates, you know, and seeing the difference between when they do RPR and improvements even from like imbalances left and right and ways to implement that. Did we do that a year ago? No, that's something that over time we've gotten better at. You know, I used to use Catapult and just have, I used to just use their tabs, their dashboards that they made. And I realized that my coaches have no clue what that is. You know what I mean? The sport coaches have no clue, you know, and then how to get them to read that data. So I had to figure it out and export the data myself and put it in a spreadsheet that makes sense to them. You know, it's like now we just use a red, yellow, green light, you know, system with Catapult. Just like, here, coach, he's green, green, green. You're good to go. You know, he's had a red day. You might want to back him off, you know, and it makes it really easy for them to look at that and say, okay, thanks, you know, and make changes to practice or, you know, how long practice is, or maybe changing the way that we do things during our training session. You know, something interesting that, you know, in football, you know, the traditional things like full gassers and half gassers, or maybe some of your traditional type conditioning. We did that during the winter last year. We were doing full gassers and half gassers, and our high speed distance was like through the roof, you know, over 12 miles an hour. Our guys were, you know, over 2,000 yards. Right. And like, you look at our game data and you're like, we don't hit 1,000 yards in a game of high speed distance, you know, for those skill guys. And I'm not saying don't train them that way, but that's just an adjustment that we can make to our training to make it more specific to what they do during practice. If we're trying to prepare, you know, the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments for that type of activity, then let's do that. You know what I mean? But when it comes to our staff and how we utilize the technology, we all use it in different ways, but we all follow the same parameters. We've had presentations that we've done on, hey, this is how the Tendo unit works. This is what we're looking for. And we have questions about, what about this exercise? What are we looking at for speed on a hang clean? Or when we're doing dynamic effort, you know, squats, what are we looking for? Well, it depends on what quality you're trying to train. And I think having that auto regulation, that feedback, is what makes it really easy for us to determine we're training the right things, we're doing the right things to prepare them the right way, that and in a way that they need to develop.
Right. So, you know, I think that, I mean, you tell me, right? I mean, so like here at USF, we use the polar heart rate. So we you know, every practice, and you can see your charts and see where we're at, and you know, there's very little, I guess, conversion from here to there in terms of, you know, what's communicated and between, because just like you said, the sport coaches don't know exactly what you're talking about, but we can tone things back or turn things up, and you know, so at what point does it come, you know, like there is some coach's intuition, right? You know, there's definitely a point where, okay, well, you can tell me here's the data, here's the data, here's the data, you know, but I also think that there's a lot of merit in your two eyes and you watching your guys or girls walk into a room and they got their heads down, they can't tell their foot from their ass, and they don't know, there's a coach's intuition, whether or not they can go in and push something real hard one day, or maybe one day you just watch them walk in the door and you got to tone it back.
Yep.
So at one point, do you think that those two things merge, and how have you dealt with that?
Look, I'll give you two examples. You got to have times where you are fatigued and you have to still push. There has to be that time. We've had days in the weight room, I'm like, I get it's Friday, but guess what? We're squatting, you know what I mean? And we're going to get after it. And I know you've had a long week and you might have had some other things going on. You might have had to pull an all-nighter for a paper, whatever. I don't care what it is. You got to push. And those moments are important for their development, psychologically. Right. We're talking about things physiologically. You know what I mean? You're talking polar heart rates. You're talking about internal load. I'm talking catapults and external load, but their brains have to overcome that sometimes. In a sport, you get dinged up. Do you tap out or do you keep going? And those moments still have to happen. But the technology can help you make informed decisions about how your training is going. You can look at your polar system and say, wow, we've been going really hard, I'm going to dial it back. But then I'm going to ramp it up that next day we come back again. You know what I mean? And really push them, and that just helps you make that decision. It's the technology or the data is not the end all be all.
Right.
But if you know that your team needs some pushing mentally, then you have to do that as a coach. You can't just, if I use the Tendos, this was my second example. If I use the Tendos and I got a kid he's just dragging. You know what I mean? He's just dragging. He's trying to sandbag the day. I know him, So in season, for example, we use the Tendos a lot in season as a cutoff switch. Right. I remember reading Brian Mann's book, and below 0.3, you're probably, if you get a rep at 0.3 or below, you're probably only going to get one more rep after that, So in season, we use it as a cutoff switch. Well, if I know a kid's a sandbagger, you know what I mean? Or if I know that I don't trust that kid, I'll be like, you're good, keep going. You know what I mean? And he might, if he goes, again, that just goes back to it, but like, you're going to make him do the next set, and you're going to make him push a little bit, but you also know that your kids that are your hard workers, the ones that are hungry, you might be able to bump them up. You know what I mean? You might be able to say, hey, man, I got a couple guys that are really, really strong that we alter their training program in season because they're, squat 3 times body weight, are just really, really strong kids. I'm like, hey, let's just focus on keeping maximum power. Maximum power throughout the season. We'll hit a couple strength days. We'll go on and off. go about in like 3-week cycles as we go through, but they don't really need the heavy strength training the way that some of our other guys do to maintain their strength.
Yeah, those are some great points. I mean, so when you're talking about baseline, right? Let's say you have I'll be honest. I mean, you know where I've worked. You know kind of what I've done, and like I've never been at a place like South Florida that has some of the variables, has some of the resources that we have down here that I know other coaches don't. So can you give kind of a baseline of where coaches? So let's say like there's a coach like me, right, mm-hmm. who it's their first time with the opportunity to be able to work with some of that equipment. Right, the first time that they're able to really dive into those things, and obviously you don't want to just dive right in, right? You want to be able to have your knowledge, but it's some advice you can give them in terms of how to start, where to put their head at first before they kind of move forward and put that stressors on their athletes.
Yeah, I would say start slow. You got to start slow, and use your resources that you have as a strength coach. So if you have interns, have them research some of the other stuff. And the other part is if you do get a new product, something that you're not familiar with, contact the company. Contact other strength coaches that are using it as well, or ask the company, hey, can you give me some other teams that may be using this right. equipment? And call them up and be like, hey, how do you guys use it? I was fortunate enough that, I'm not a sports scientist. I am a strength coach, but working with all the things that I work with, I have to fill that role. And getting in contact with the schools that have sports scientists and how they use it has been huge for me. I went to a Catapult conference, where everybody there's only a few strength coaches there, but I was able to meet people that are very much more in tune with that stuff than I am. But they're like, hey, do A, B, C, and D. And then present that to your coaches because they have to go through that experience too. It's easy for me as a strength coach to talk to a sport coach. Imagine a sports scientist trying to talk to a sport coach and trying to make changes to their program. Right. I was a former football player, and I can go talk to football coaches about football. I have some degree of knowledge. I'm by no means a football coach,
right.
but I know how the game works. And I can have those conversations with them about, hey, maybe we go, instead of going live, let's go thud. You know what I mean? Instead of going thud, let's go, our whiz tempo or our run-through tempo. You know what I mean? So making just simple changes. So I think as a young coach, and you just get experience with the having resources, interns, doing research projects, for sure. You know what I mean? Like, be like, all right, I did that. Literally, I did it for like 3 terms of interns. You know what I mean? Like I had 3 10-week terms. I was like, research Tendo units. Tell me what you find. You know what I mean? Whether that's studies on it or just research that from different articles, whatever it is. But I've gotten different pieces from different interns to help me make better choices on how to implement them, how to use them, and then discuss it with your staff. You know what I mean? Discuss it with the other strength coaches that you work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think about, coaches that, because I know some coaches, honestly, there's that gap, right, where they just don't, like, they have the resources, but maybe they don't utilize it.
Yeah.
How do you get through to those coaches, I'm not going to say change their ways because you're not going to.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Everybody's got a way they like to do things, and I tell interns, I tell everybody that there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? But how do you get through to them to really, really make them understand the value that some of that stuff brings?
So I look at it the same way I look at it as like teaching an athlete something. You get it. Let's say you get a freshman in that thinks they're really well trained and they had all these skills that got them there, and you have to find ways to reach them. You know what I mean? You got to find a way to say, to a coach, they're like, gosh, our injuries. You're like, this could help with injuries. You know what I mean? That's your in right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if concussions are important, you know what I mean? You're like, hey, this piece of equipment can help us reduce the risk of those. And they're like, really? And you're like, yeah, this is how. You got to educate them the same way you got to do with an athlete. You break down your team. Not every time you break them down, that piece of information that you're giving them is going to reach everybody. You know what I mean? But you got to pick which things are going to reach them at different times. Some kids might like the science. Some kids might just like the intensity of what you're saying. You know, there has to be a different approach that you can try, a different avenue that you can go through to make it work. And that's the same thing with coaches as it is with your athletes. Right. You know, if I get a kid that comes in with a great powerlifting background that's really, really strong, and I'm like, hey, we're going to do velocity-based training, you know, he's probably going to tell me, like, no way, you know what I mean? Or maybe you have, like, this doesn't work or something along those lines, you know? Right. I have to figure out a way to say, hey, this is going to help you be more explosive on the field. This is going to help that strength that you have transfer to you firing off the ball, you know, or whatever that is, you know? And it's the same way with coaches. If you've got that technology that you got for a specific purpose, because specifically, you know, Catapult, I wasn't a big fan. We did a trial of it, and then I just found out literally they were coming on campus to pick up the stuff, and we're like, you're actually going to do it. We're going to get all of them. We're like, oh, okay, let's do it. You know what I mean? I guess we're doing this thing, you know? And now that I've done it, I got both feet in, and I had to figure out a way to make it work, and then figure out a way for it to work for the coaches, and figure out a way for the players to see what they're doing and what the different metrics mean.
Right. Yeah. I think it's just taken over. You know what I mean? I really think, and it's a positive thing. You know, it's taken over for the health of the athletes, safety of the athletes. I definitely think it's some powerful stuff. So, no, man, I really appreciate you being on the show. You know, if you guys have not followed Spencer, you follow him on Facebook. I know. What's your guys' Instagram handle?
Dartmouth Strong or Dartmouth Strength. We've got two.
Okay, Dartmouth Strong, Dartmouth Strength. Make sure you follow both of them. All right, and thanks, Spence. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks a lot.